Well, hello and welcome back to the Mission Boards channel. Today I thought I would take a few minutes and just talk through our sanding processes and talk in a little bit more detail about the machines that we use to do the sanding. So when we have some kind of a blank like this one that we're going to make into our small thumb hole board, after it's cut to size and plane to thickness, then the next thing that we're going to do is actually run it through our drum sander. And we only run material through the drum sander once it's been cut to size and has a square end. If I feed a ragged end into the drum sander, it sometimes can tear the belt in there. So we're going to do that next, is run this board through our drum sander. And what we have is a Grizzly drum sander. It's actually model G1066Z, G1066Z. And it has two drums in it. And I'm going to show you those drums because we're going to try and make them a little more potent here. And I'll show you how we do that. So hopefully you can see these two drums that are on the machine. And I change them out when they need change, but I usually don't change them any more often than I absolutely have to because it's kind of a pain in the butt. And besides that, they last quite a bit of time, but they just need cleaned up. And so I have a cleaning stick for sanding belts. I just buy these at Harbor Freight, and I'm going to use that first to clean these up. And I think you'll be amazed at how quickly we can clean a lot of this sawdust and a lot of the gunk off of them and make them pretty useful and pretty potent again. All right, so what I'm going to do is just use this. This is some kind of an abrasive cleaner, and I get these Harbor Freight. They don't cost very much, but it's kind of a rubbery material, and it's like a giant eraser, and it gets all the debris off of the sanding belts. So hopefully you can see that on camera, that we've removed most of the dust and the resin that gets built up in these belts. And they're looking half decent again. They're going to need changed out before too awful long, but we can definitely get some more life out of them. And we have a 150 grit on the front, and I believe we have a 180 grit on the back. So I'm going to go ahead and run this one board through just to show you what it does. We'll close this back up. The thing about a drum sander like this one, I bought this one because it has the two different drums, so I get two different grits run through at one time. But the thing about drum sanders is that they're not belt sanders. They don't actually have any ability to thickness the material. They can't reduce the thickness by very much because they can only just sand the surface. They're not thickness sanders. And if you buy one of these and expect it to be a thicknessing tool and capable of reducing the thickness and doing that fast, you're going to be disappointed. But if you buy one of these and you use it the way it was intended to be used, which is just to sand the surface, just to be a surface sander, it works pretty well, I think. And it's been a great addition to our shop. So I'm going to move the camera back here and run this piece through. And I find the best way to do this is just to go slow and take multiple passes. right, so that's done exactly what we wanted to do. The surface has all been planed. You can maybe see this little mark, but I just made an indentation where I'm eventually going to drill a hole in this for the thumb hole. So by having that drum sander, it really takes a lot of the sanding effort out of this, but we have other sanders too that make smaller contributions, but the drum sander sands the big flat sides, and that's the first thing that we do typically. And then we come over to this machine, which is a South Bend SB1093 sander. It's basically a belt sander that I have positioned to work vertically, and we're going to use it to round the corners on this board. I'm going to mark it out here quick, and I'll show you how we do that. So we just have a little jig. We mark off the corners. And then we're going to turn this on and have the little marks on there, and we're just going to round all the corners off. All right, so as you can see, all the corners are nicely rounded. This belt needs cleaned as well. I'm going to do that quickly. We have one other sander here that I'm not going to use on this particular board that we're making, but we have this rigid oscillating sander. I don't know if you can see that well, but the rigid sander is important when we're trying to sand an inside curve. For instance, here's a handle, one of our large handle boards that we're working on, and so it has these inside curves which you can't get the sander I was just using, you can't get to that to smooth these curves up, but you can on this, and I'll show you just real quickly with this board. So because this oscillates up and down, we're sanding on a different spot all the time, but it also enables us to sand this a little bit more smoothly and to get rid of any machine marks from when we cut it on the bandsaw. And I really do recommend these rigid saws. There's a lot more expensive, fancier saws, but you can buy these at Home Depot for like $300. And again, what's really unique about it is that this belt not only goes around, but it also goes up and down, and that's important. So once we've done the sanding on our handleboard we're making, then the next thing that we would do is to route the edges. I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'll show you a couple steps that are our final sanding would be with a hand sander and then the flap sander. So I've routed the edges quickly, and how we would sand these outside edges then is what I want to show you next. And we would just use a hand sander to do that. So we have a lot of the Ryobi sanders, and I like these because they're cheap. Ryobi actually puts their batteries on sale twice a year. So usually at Father's Day and at Christmas you can buy a 2-pack of the batteries and even get a sander for free. So I've done that. Most years I get one of those. 1 sander for free, 2 batteries. And I like these just because they're inexpensive, and if it burns up or quits working properly, I can just throw it away and don't feel like I lost a lot of money. And we just use 150 grit sandpaper. Typically I get that at Harbor Freight, to be honest with you. But I'm going to use the hand sander next. And the purpose of the hand sander would be to take any machine marks off of this. So there's little burn marks on the corners from the router, and I want to get rid of all those. Make sure the edges are smoothed over nicely from doing the routing. And so we'll do that next here. All right, so we use the hand sander to get rid of any black marks from machining, from routing, from having it lay on the other tables. And so at this point, it's pretty clean and free of burn marks. The end grain even is smooth. And then the final step would be to take this over to our flap sander. And this is a machine that a couple guys from our woodworking group built this machine. And it has flaps on it that are backed up with bristles. So that it has some stiffness, but also some ability to give as you sand it. And I'll show you how that works. So this is the greatest tool because it saves so much hand sanding. And really just run it on the left side has 180 grit and the right side has 240 grit. So these flaps are safe. You can put your hand on them. It's the weirdest thing, but it doesn't cause any abrasion or burn. Just is a very soft sanding, and we love it because it gives it that final pass that makes everything super smooth and very consistent. And I'm going to take it over and do the same thing on the 240 side. And so that's it. You have a super smooth board, and that would be our final sanding. At this point, this board would be ready to burn our logo on it, and to also then put it in the mineral oil and put the final finish on it. The only thing this board needs, though, is this hole drill through. And when I'm out today, I've got to find a new bit because the current Forstner bit that we use is not cutting very well and it's not very sharp. So I'm going to buy a new bit so we can drill this hole a little better and faster. So that's our sanding products. Again, this one's been kind of homemade, but we love it because it does a really important job for us. And those are the steps that we would typically go through with all of our boards. And sanding something that people don't like, but it's what's important. You know, the guys doing it, it's not their favorite job, but it's important to the final product. And we want a nice, smooth, flat finish that looks just like that. So thanks for watching this video about how we go through our sanding processes. It's pretty simple, but we have several different machines that help make it quicker, easier. Nobody really likes to sand. I've said that before in this channel, and I think it's very true. Sanding is one of our least favorite jobs here, but it's very important to the final product, and so we try to do a good job at it. And the machines that we have help us to do that well. So if you find what we're doing here at Mission Boards a little bit interesting, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and subscribe. We'll keep making more and more of these videos to tell you about what we do at Mission Boards. And Mission Boards is all about making wood products that we sell, and we raise that money, use the proceeds from those sales to raise money for our missions efforts in Guatemala. And I appreciate you watching. Thanks. Have a great day.